I would like to direct your attention to the slideshow that is about to play. All the 29 points from feminist Peggy McIntosh on the idea of male and racial supremacy will appear first. It will then be followed by many photos titled, I Need Feminism Because, a movement created in 2012 advocating for feminism. All three of these topics will later be introduced and explained during the TED Talk. Thank you for listening and enjoy. I Got 99 Problems, and society's attitude toward feminism and racial equality covers about 98 of them. Our society is extremely contradicting and exaggerated, and the most conflicting of all is the phrase, all men are created equal. This country was built upon that phrase, and it needs to be ensured. Under the law, everyone is considered equal, but it's evidently clear that there are differences among our people. These bitter beliefs were so deeply rooted in the past that our society still clings onto misogyny, male supremacy, racial supremacy, or just oppression in general today. Misogyny is when one believes women are inferior to himself. During the 19th to early 20th century, the norms of women meant not going to school, not participating in politics, not speaking out to stop this, and instead being trapped in a home with 10 children and cleaning up after them. Women who face these injustices are subjected to think and feel less than what they truly are. Just because you were born a woman doesn't entitle a man to be better than you are. This is why women's rights activists, or feminists, created alliances among their communities in hope to gain the same equal rights as men for jobs and privileges. However, this idea was not achieved so easily. Likewise to how African American slaves received their freedom. Women did not legally gain their rights until years later, starting with their first meeting in 1848 at Seneca Falls, New York. This was then followed by the creations of women organizations such as the NAWSA and the National Association of Colored Women in 1896. Women had to prove themselves worthy to the government that there was no difference in gender when it came to intelligence and skill. On August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment for the right for women to vote was ratified. It only took them 50 years for the government to realize that America's citizens were unhappy with their lifestyle, which is also affecting the economy. Another major historical event with misogyny and the cruel mistreatment of women go way back during the African slave trade. Since the very beginning of it all, slavery took both men and women, looking upon them as if they were animals. To make matters worse, misogyny among African American women led them to receive unnecessary treatment, such as sexual abuse and mostly rape by white men. This idea expanded even more when the importation of slaves was banned. Not being able to receive more slaves made white men believe that rape was an okay thing to do to produce more slaves. By the 1860s, about 10% of the slave population was mulatto due to these extensive rapings in America. A century later, during the 1970s, black feminism was widely recognized and outlined their bravery and independence during the movement. Now, does anyone know what male supremacy is? Male supremacy is the idea of men being more dominant than women. You might be wondering what led to this idea. In America's society, it's obvious that males are portrayed to be the stronger sex. This is because America is a patriarchal society, a society where men hold the authority over women and children. Throughout history, one could tell that men had more control over women. For instance, politicians mainly consisted of men. Males are considered to be the protector of women. As shown in pop culture, especially in movies, males are generally the protagonist. In 2012, the top 67 leading movies consisted of 55 male leading actors and only 12 female actors. Movies are also the biggest factor that lead to stereotypes. Whether containing racial, sexist, age, or cultural stereotypes, movies affect the mind of the viewer. No one was born as a stereotyping baby, but what we see while growing up implants in our minds, causing us to believe that the things we see are actually true. For example, Americans are fat, Asians are smart, men do all the hard work, and women do all the cleaning and cooking. However, these are not entirely false. Americans are known for fast food restaurants, which led to America being one of the most obese countries. Most Asian parents do have high expectations for their children, explaining why a large majority of the race is smart. In the past, while the men in the family worked, women stayed home doing house chores. Overall, these are all versions of a single story which have become our basic knowledge of those people, causing us to believe that they are only capable of one thing. Going back to male supremacy, Peggy McIntosh, a feminist and anti-racist activist, wrote a list about male privileges. Male privilege is a theory that argues that men have more rights than women based on their sex. This basically shows that men actually don't have to do anything to gain equality. It's just handed to them. The list that McIntosh wrote consisted of 29 points to demonstrate how men have unearned their rights, which were shown in the beginning of this TED Talk, explaining that it is already a fact that all of these points are true. McIntosh also wrote a list of white privileges that went into the idea of racial supremacy. Similar to male privileges, white privileges also argue that a white person has unearned rights that other races do not, which leads to the idea of racial supremacism. Just like male supremacism, racial supremacism is an equally unacceptable form of oppression. In today's society and during the past, males have been thought of as the superior sex in comparison to women. Nowadays, if a woman isn't a housewife and does have a job, she is still paid less than a man. In 2012, it has been statistically proven she would make 78 cents to every man's dollar. After the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it became illegal for employers to discriminate based upon race. Yet, in addition to the United States gender wage gap, there is also a racial wage gap. Surprisingly, also proven in 2012, African American men would make 89 cents to a white man's dollar. Now, consider how worse an African American woman's wage would be compared to those other examples. I'll tell you, it's 64 cents to a white man's dollar. Generally, America is an economy based country, and knowing the inequalities in the wages of various races is useful for understanding the overall racial and gender inequality in the United States. Wake up, America! It's 2014, and this is just blatantly wrong. To add to the problem, racial supremacy has always been one prominent type of injustice. An example of being slavery, and once slavery was banned. It proliferated into a game of if I can't have you, no one can. After Reconstruction was over, there were even laws that supported this injustice. For instance, from 1877 until the 1950s, racial discrimination taboos that were based off of black codes were known as Jim Crow laws. To tie it all together and compare racial and gender inequality, the groups of oppressed people have been stuck in the never-ending cycle of slavery. The prominent oppressor would fall as a victim to white men. And even so that slavery was banned, it was not eradicated. Today, it is not called slavery, but has been sugar-coated to the term known as human trafficking. The term implies that women and small children are stripped away from their families to become slaves. This is now a major problem all over the world containing both gender and racial issues. Thank you.